Welcome to Beyond the Lab, a series by the Office of Career Development within the Biomedical Research, Education, and Training Department of the Vanderbilt University School of Medicine. My name is Kate Stewart. I'm glad to be here today with Wallace Sharif, who was a graduate student alumni of Vanderbilt University. So welcome back. Tell me a little bit about what you did during your training at Vanderbilt.
So I was in the Department of Biochemistry here. I finished in 2003 from the lab of Wayne Walls, who's now in University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences in Little Rock. I studied homologous recombination and chromosome segregation in fission yeast.
Okay, so what did you do after that?
So after that, I did a postdoc. I wanted to do something that my mother could understand, so I switched fields completely. I was actually, as a early graduate student, I did a journal club on the molecular mechanisms of aging, so how we get old on a cellular level and ways in which we can delay that process. And so when I was thinking about postdocs, I had an offer to do kind of one in yeast genetics. It was kind of along the same route of what I did before, but I said, let me try this field that has stuck with me for 4 years. So I sent out some resumes and cover letters to some of the biggest labs in telomere biology, and one of them responded back.
Okay.
So I ended up in the laboratory of Jerry Shea and Woody Wright at University of Texas for Southwestern.
Okay, so your position now, you went from that position to your current role?
Yeah, I'm a assistant professor in biology at Morehouse College.
Okay.
It's a small liberal arts school in Atlanta, Georgia. Okay. All male, historically black school.
Okay, so what is that? If you had to give your percentages of research, teaching, service, how does that shake out?
Well, it's a college, so all undergrad population. Teaching is the focus, but research is important for the development of students. So, you know, it's probably, depending on the year, you know, maybe a 60-40 split or maybe 70-30. Yeah.
Okay, so you've been there for a little while? You've been there
about 9 years. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if it's hard to remember the first year. It might have been a harder transition. What was your first year like?
It was intense. I mean, that was my alma mater for one. So, you know, one was just kind of being back and being flooded with all those memories from college. But then it was learning how to teach. I didn't have any real teaching experience there, and they had me in general biology, which, you know, I knew cellular biology, but I couldn't tell you much about physiology, so I had to learn those sorts of things. I remember having to learn photosynthesis, and that was tough.
So what were some of the skills that you had to learn quickly on the job that you didn't maybe have in your Vanderbilt training?
Well, I think, you know, communication, obviously I got in graduate school, but this was at a different level. So it's one thing communicating with scientists who have a background in what you're doing. It's quite another to communicate in a way to teach these students how to learn. And then, you know, the other thing that I think I really am still working on is how to lead teams, how to manage students in all of their priorities.
Okay. How do you balance that time? What are some of the strategies you use?
Well, you know, time management is always a struggle. I've started trying to write down everything and kind of trying to prioritize my commitment to the beginning of the week, and so that I don't have to think about things. So that's something I actually started in graduate school, where I just plan out the whole week on Sunday evenings and try and stick to that schedule. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
It doesn't, okay.
Most times it doesn't.
So you work with undergraduates, other students. What are some of the words of wisdom that you give students who are interested in science and who are interested in doing what you do now?
Well, you know, most students don't want to go to a small liberal arts school to teach. But, you know, it's important to get them to maintain their focus and to look at the big picture, to understand why they're doing things, look past any individual test or any individual lab experience to show how that furthers their own development. And for our students, I tell them they need to really, you know, take advantage of the opportunities that are out there, to look for them and then go after them.
Okay, so if there's a PhD student or grad student, postdoc who wants to do a teaching-specific role, what are some of the advice you would give them?
Well, one is to get some experience teaching. Nowadays, there are a lot of fellowships that specifically are geared towards both science and teaching. So the ERACTA fellowships and some of those are very good. I think another is that the science is important, and even if you think you want to teach, you have to have a background in scientific research, and you have to be a good scientist so that you can bring those skills to the classroom.
Know that you're involved in your roles, and you even serve on some committees here at Vanderbilt. You must do some networking. What does that look like for you personally? What is your own strategies to network?
Well, networking, I think for me, in many cases, is really looking for opportunities for my students. And so the networks that I tend to form are less about my own personal development and really interacting with administrators at other Research One institutions that might have opportunities for my students to engage in. Okay. It's really amazing how a random conversation can lead to a life-changing opportunity for a student. I've run into people at a bar, at a conference, and I mentioned that there's a space that's available, and if I had anybody I recommended, and things happen, and they now have their PhD in that program. Right. So those sorts of things. It's the one that shows the power of what you can do as a professor, particularly at a liberal arts institution, and again, kind of taking advantage of those opportunities when they come out.
Okay. I'm sure networking helped you land the role that you're in too, as well, being from Morehouse as an undergrad. How did the job search go for you?
Yeah, Morehouse was the only place I applied. I was in the middle, or I guess towards the end of my postdoc, and I just happened to be there for homecoming, and I was, kind of doing the homecoming thing, and I kind of came across some professors, and asked what I was doing, and I said what I was doing. It turns out, they recognized the lab that I was in. Oh, that's a big lab. This is at a great institution. You should really consider interviewing. We have this open position. So I think within maybe 4 months, I had submitted a package, interviewed, and gotten an offer. It went really fast.
What are some of the differences that you see coming from somewhere like UT Southwestern and Vanderbilt, going back to Morehouse, that you would maybe not expect, someone who's not used to Morehouse, but maybe would need to know about a small liberal arts environment?
Well, one of the things I think that's an adjustment for all new faculty members, if you kind of consider where you're coming from, if you're coming out of postdoc or graduate school, you're surrounded by, really bright, highly motivated individuals that all have the same goal. College is a little bit different at the undergraduate level. They're typically really bright, right? Their motivation could be questionable, and they're still trying to find themselves. And so usually, I think it certainly happened with me. I think it happens with a lot of other professors. They start out with these very high expectations, and they have to learn how to modulate their expectations for something that's reasonable for the undergraduate population.
Any final words of wisdom for any Vanderbilt graduate students or postdocs that you'd want to share?
At this level, kind of working exclusively with undergraduates, there are some challenges. I did not realize when I started that what it meant to be in an entirely undergraduate population, a college, and that you don't really have graduate students driving your research, and so you have students who will come in, but then they have midterms, they'll disappear for a couple of weeks, or they go off for the summer, which we encourage. But all of that kind of means that you have to work very hard to maintain research productivity at that level. And so you have to kind of adjust your expectations and design your research projects that can accommodate that kind of work.
Okay, good. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure, yeah.